Man, with this hair, I look like I'm about to drop the hottest evangelical sermon ever. And the Lord said, let there be this. Hello everybody, E here. Welcome back to another Top 5 Friday. Today we are talking about books 15 through 11. Last week we did 20 through 16. Today we are doing 15 through 11. Yes, I'm trying to keep this straight in my brain because the math, for some odd reason, in my head doesn't work. 5 to 11 should only be 4. That's what my brain says. 15 to 11 should only be, there's only a difference of 4. But if anybody else get confused like that, there's 5 books. Number 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. Anyways, there's 5 books on this list, 15 to 11. So jumping into it, well, actually not jumping into it. What I'm going to say first is last week we discussed the books in the position, like I said, from 20 to 16, and why those books are on the list is important. Each and every book that I put on my top 20 list has the position that it does because these are things that I value in that order. So if you're looking at the list and going, okay, does he value character development over scenery, over this, that, and the other, whatever it might be, that's how you're going to rank what I consider the most important elements of a story. You're going to rank them like I do in this list, from my opinion. It's just me. It's just E. That's it. So at number 15, we have The World According to Garp by John Irving. This book sits on my list because of the character development. I think it is a masterclass when there's not a whole lot going on. In fact, there's another book in this where there's not a whole lot going on, and it's more a character-driven piece, but it's on the list for a different reason. This one, the sole reason it is on this list is because of the characters. Garp, everybody in it, the family, there's a thing that, and it comes full circle. I'm stumbling over my words here because I'm thinking as I'm doing this, if another book should be in its place. That's literally how my brain works, and that's why this list changes all the time. In fact, it changed just today when I went to go shoot this video. It just changed, but we'll get to that in a second. But with Caroline Kepnes, I know we're talking about John Irving, with her book You, and her book Hidden Bodies, and her book Providence. All 3 of those books, I love those books specifically for the character development, and everybody down to the smallest character, no matter how small a support character, got a complete storyline. And that's what John Irving, I think, he does it. It's not that he does it better, it's just that this book is more of a saga, and it covers an entire life. Now, when we talk about character development, we're going to get into character development again. But this book, I will forever be chasing my tail, trying to recreate what Irving did with this. I have yet to create a story from a character's birth all the way up until their death. I have yet to create that type of story. And until I accomplish that, this book is going to be on the list for that reason. Not only is it character development, and everybody gets their full story, but the main purpose for the reason it's on the list for character development is because it follows Garp's life from a child all the way to an adult. And if it wasn't for the fact that I don't want to double up on this list. Stephen King is, of course, on this list. Revival would be in this spot, too. So there are plenty of other examples, but I think this one, especially for the saga narrative of this one person's life, this is the best I can think of. If you want to write great characters, John Irving is the way to go because he delves into every aspect. Sexuality, love, hates, all that stuff. And then he normalizes evidence. No matter how weird something is, like the relationship in the hotel New Hampshire, I think is what it's called. That's one of his weirdest. If you want to talk about, off the beaten path characters, that's another one that you can look at. But I didn't care too much for the overall story. With this one, I was held enraptured? No, I wasn't enraptured. I was held apt throughout the entire thing. My attention was there, and I never actually wanted to stop reading this book. We went on about that way too long. Speaking of going on too long, we have this mammoth motherfucker Infinite Jest is at number 14. There's a lot of jokes about this book. It's a dude bro book. It's a white people book. It's a privileged book. It's this, that, and the other. Whatever you want to call it. I don't care. It's an addictive book. And as far as theme is concerned, the author went into the novel trying to write a book about addiction that was addictive. That blows my mind. And the way the theme comes full circle, all the aspects of addiction are there. There is a chapter that is absolutely brilliant toward the end of the book that seems like it serves no purpose whatsoever. It's just thrown in there, and the purpose of that book is to show you you're sitting there as a reader not caring about this, wanting the book to conclude, and David Foster Wallace is like, you need to slow down and care about this person. And that's another aspect of addiction. You're moving too fast, you only care about yourself. He's saying slow down and pay attention to this character, because even though he might not mean something in the vast, realm of this book, he is a human being, and you should listen to him. There's so much more in here. Being an addict myself, people get confused. I always say I am an addict, but I haven't used since 2001. I am on narcotic pain medicine, but that's for my back. But I will always be that junkie. I will always have that, and that's not NA talking or AA or whatever you want to call it. That's not that talking. I will always have that taste, just like I still to this day want to smoke cigarettes. So I still to this day have that need, that want, that craving. The pain medicine doesn't even touch that craving. But anytime I think about heroin, I want to do heroin. So I try not to think about it. This book is the literary equivalent of heroin, and I don't know how he did it. As soon as I stopped reading this 1,200-page book, it's got 300 pages of endnotes, but as soon as I stopped this 1,200-page book, I wanted to pick it up and start reading again, and my wife, who read along with me, said I wouldn't mind that. If we actually had the time, this could be another Stephen King's It for me, a book that I constantly am reading over and over and over again and learning something new. My favorite characters in here were the two agents that went back and forth. I remember the voices I did for them. I'm really bad with character names, so I apologize there. That's my failure, not the author's. I think there was a character named Don who I was always confused whether or not he was white or black. I don't think it mattered, but there was really weird stuff where he would use the N-word, and then you'd come to find out that he was white, but he wasn't getting called on it around black people. It was very weird aspect there. I didn't know what exactly the character was supposed to be, and if that ambivalence, that ambiguity, not ambivalence, that ambiguity is there for a reason, I'm not sure. But anyways, yeah. Number 14, Infinite Jest. Now we get to number 13, which just changed right when I went to shoot this video. I was looking at the placements, and I was like, wait a second. The Pailo Family Circus is good, but why is it on the list? I got thinking about it, and the whole reason it's on the list, and why I took Twilight Eyes by Dean Koontz off the list, is because of the carnival element. I was like, okay, the Pailo Family Circus does it, and does a really good job of it, but it's more of a fantasy type thing. Well, it's not more of it is a fantasy type thing, because they're literally in another realm. If you want a great dark fantasy carnival story, definitely read the Pailo Family Circus. But as far as, for me, one of my favorite things that I still have yet to write a good book about is carnival aspect, and I think the book that deserves to be here the most above Twilight Eyes and above Pailo Family Circus is Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. This book is, I think I called it John Irving, if John Irving and Stephen King wrote a book together. You have the supernatural aspect, almost like a, I don't know, it's almost like Carrie, and then you have, on the other side of things, you have the John Irving character development. But what I loved the most about this book is the carnival setting. The setting, they put you there. It does deal, the characters are amazing. It puts you there. The freak show aspect of it is another thing that I will eventually in my career tackle. The way that so many people have fought to close down the freak show and have given, and I know this is unpopular opinion, but they have shoved off to the side these people who had a job. And not everybody Not every single freak or person who was born with a disability or a disfigurement or whatever you want to call it, not everybody who worked in those places was unhappy. They were glad to have a paycheck. There were several people who, once the freak shows were closed down, and no, I don't like calling them freaks, but once those oddity shows were closed down, they committed suicide because they had nothing else. They had nowhere else to go, no other way to make money, and they truly felt that they weren't welcome. That's something that is covered in this book that I think is beautiful. The main character is the oddest main character you will ever come across, but this one is on the list because I freaking love carnivals. And that's why it's at number 13. It's literally only for this setting. It's my favorite carnival book of all time. Next up is a book that is polarizing for horror readers, and that's why, sorry, bug, and that's why we're going to be discussing it. It's the main reason why we're going to be discussing it is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. I said in the last video, some people had a problem with this, but I said in the last video that I am a Robert McCammon appreciator and not a Robert McCammon fan. I would say the same thing about Peter Straub. I am a Peter Straub appreciator, not a Peter Straub fan. I hate the way this guy writes. I'm just going to get that out there. He's far too vague. It's the same reason I can't stand Josh Malerman. Josh Malerman is more of like a condensed Blake Crouch. If Blake Crouch wrote a Peter Straub book, it's a very punchy, but that doesn't fit for that kind of thing, I don't think. But with Ghost Story, the book is boring. There's no getting around it. The book is terribly boring. It's probably twice as long as it should be, but then there you have the problem. Every single horror fan that I know that loves this book is bored with this book until the book is done. Once you sit down, you start thinking about all the stuff, all the chess pieces that Peter Straub was putting up throughout the story that finally came together in the end to just create this tone of utter dread and horror is amazing. Now there is action in the book. There are scenes that do pay off. The whole book pays off. But the story itself is boring. By the end of it, you get the same exact feel for the grip of it as you do from Ghost Story. It's the same type of dread-inducing story. The reason why it's on this list is I have no idea how he did it. No idea whatsoever. And I would actually hazard a guess to say not even Peter Straub knows how he did it. Because even though Coco was good, Coco wasn't this type of story. I didn't like his first two novels. I love this one, which is his third novel. Actually, it's his fifth, but I can't find Marriages and Venus, or whatever it's called, those first two books. I can't find those at all. So I started with Julia. I didn't care too much for that one. It has a really good opening, really good ending. And then, If I Could See You Now, nobody has been able to explain the ending to me. Literary scholars have not, and I mean that, have not been able to explain the ending, have not been able to explain the ending of the book to me. Literal scholars. So I'm not sure that there is a meaning. So then you have Ghost Story, which is brilliant. Shadowlands is good also, but Shadowlands is a little, even Shadowlands has more going on in it than this one, and I'm not sure what makes this book so good, so I study it. Now, why is it on the list? Do I want to write a story that meanders and it's still brilliant by the end? Not really, but I am intrigued by the literary aspect of everything coming together. Now, there's another one on here, Christopher Buehlman's Those Across the River. But that one, I had it on the list for a complete experience, but it was more along the lines, I was looking for the Salem's Lot with werewolves, and that one ended up on the list because of that. This one is a complete experience. I have no idea why it's so good, so I'm putting this up here because of the mystery. So this is the number 12, a book I can't figure out, a book I have tried dissecting my entire life. It is a chore to read, but I love it to death. It's one of the greatest horror novels of all time, I feel, because of that. Because there's no explaining the horror at all, I don't feel. Maybe you can. Go ahead and ruin my day down there in the doobly-doo. But this is number 12, which is Ghost Story. So we have the complete literary experience, but it's a mystery in how they do it. I know how Buhlman did his. I know how Jack Gents did The Grip of It. So Ghost Story, I still have no idea how Peter Straub pulled it off. I honestly believe it's like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's just a happy accident. Finally, at number 11, we have a book that I think even its author would be surprised that it is above some of these other ones. He's a very humble individual, and that I found myself fanboying hard over this dude, to the extent that I fanboy over Stephen King, and that is Keelan Patrick Burke. I don't have connections to this author. I've been in anthologies with him before. We've talked on social media, all different kinds of things. I have interactions with him. It's kind of weird putting someone I kind of sort of know on this list. I'm not best friends with Keelan Patrick Burke. Don't think that. But he's a good dude. He'll talk to you if you ask him a question on Twitter. He's liable to answer you. But yeah, Ken is here because he did something that I didn't think was possible. Making the aftermath of a slasher film interesting. Now, it could be argued that this book is a sequel to a slasher film without having the first movie. And I think that's the brilliance of the story, is he completely got rid of the slasher film. Completely got rid of the slasher film and only did the aftermath of the slasher film, which I think is utterly brilliant. I don't know how he pulled it off. I'm guessing it is all he boiled it down to a simple revenge plot but the thematic elements of it, whether intended or not, I don't know, is what I loved about this. But I'm a huge horror fan. Just straight down to just blood, guts, and ass all over the place. This book has all of those elements, but it also has a literary quality that you don't find in too many authors, especially nowadays. I hate to say that. There's usually, okay, what I'm getting at is usually, and we discussed this with Christopher Buhlman's book, usually when you're dealing with a book horror novel that has literary merit, let's call it literary horror, when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with boredom for the most part. The Ghost Story, you're dealing with boredom. You're dealing with something that is building up, trying to make itself feel more important than maybe it actually should be. That's another discussion. Should horror be important? Keelan Patrick Burke would definitely say yes. I've read some articles from him where horror is emotion, and I think that's a direct quote from him. I could be wrong, and that's the brilliance of this book, is he elevates the horror genre with it. He takes takes a slasher film that should be, just a toss-off, hour-and-a-half movie, blood, guts, and ass everywhere. The rebirth scene is one of the most gruesome things ever put to paper. But he takes that and he elevates it. And there's a lot of argument right now going around about elevated horror. It's just horror. All of it is just horror, and I agree with that. But some books and some movies do elevate it past that line. But usually that line goes in, like I said, with Ghost Story and some other authors, it goes into the territory of boredom. Never in this book was I bored. It is a pretty short novel, I would guess. It took me, I read the ebook edition originally. I haven't reread it yet, but the paperback is 267 pages long. But it seemed like it took me a good deal of time, maybe because I was enjoying myself as much as I was the first time I read it. It took me about 2 weeks to read it because I was enjoying. I'm pretty sure it's because I was enjoying myself. And there's certain scenes in here that are beautiful. And there are certain scenes in this book that are beautiful because of the horror. And that's just something that I will always, my mouth will drop in awe. And I will constantly be trying to mimic that. But until next time, I have been E, you have been you. This has been another Top 5 Friday. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!